The last day then we're coming home. Beautiful thing about Barcelona, the airport is only 15 minutes from the city center, so it makes it easy to get to. And we have flight patterns coming back in a couple different directions, but still concentrated into really only 2 to 3 major flight patterns, so it's going to be pretty simple. I think on one of the tours we went to Milan, we had 13 flight patterns, so we're feeling pretty good about the airspace on this particular tour. All right, so I'm going to let Mr. Crane now go through a little bit about what we include and what we don't include on the program, and then we'll come back to some of that, especially insurance stand when we get to that.
So it's a pretty packed itinerary. There is a lot going on in your trip. A lot of things you heard Mr. Goldsmith say about they'll have free time. I want you to understand that we structure this trip. When I said at the beginning safety is our #1 concern, a lot of the ways that we create safety is through structure. I want you to know that your students, your children, will never be alone, or I should say, they'll never be by themselves. Yeah. So they're always in at least a group of 4, minimum group of 4 at all times. There's a really good mix of large full group activities, and then some areas that are really safe and secure, like the walled city of Toledo, where we can say, okay, we did our walking tour, you kind of know the lay of the land, now you can go explore for a couple hours and meet back here. So they get a really good experience. There's a lot included in this tour. Pretty much everything is included with the exception of 1 meal a day and any money for souvenir shopping. One of the biggest challenges is getting all of our musical instruments overseas and back, and getting the percussion and the sousaphones and the large marching instruments. As you know, airlines love to charge fees for just about everything. Part of the included in this trip, we've included in your price the extra additional fees to ship the instruments overseas and back. Professional tour guides on each coach, 7 nights in 4-star hotel, twin or triple occupancy. The sightseeing program, if there's any tickets or admission prices to get into any of these locations. Concert arrangements with local promotion. This is fantastic. A lot of the places we go to, we have to get a permit from the city or from the province or from the capital to perform there. And we make sure that everything is, totally legitimate and legal, and we have all the necessary paperwork. So all that is taken care of. It really is first-class experience. All of this is on your brochure, listed on the back side, by the way. Also included, gratuities to the drivers and the tour guides. Travel Guard group protection. This is really important. And Jeff is going to go into a little bit more detail about this. But one of the things you have to know is it's a nightmare. If we're having 300 people flying and we have a flight cancellation, or if there's a flight delay and we miss a connection and we have to rebook 300 people, or maybe there's 20 people on this plane, or 30 people on this plane, or 40 people on this plane. Built into the price of our tour, we have Travel Guard group protection that covers things like misconnections and those sort of things. Also, if there's an emergency medical situation, we need to go see a doctor when someone gets sick overseas. Jeff will go into a little bit more detail in a minute. All of the registrations are handled online. It's very convenient, it's very user-friendly, and you have the option of paying by credit card online or by sending in a check. There's a little bit of a discount if you mail a check in directly. We don't want to collect any money here at Shaker Heights High School. All the money is going to be handled through Jeff and through the Grand Tours office. Individual billing for each participant. Everyone gets a custom designed tour t-shirt just for our tour, and a full set of travel documents. There's a lot included in the price of this trip. This required Shaker Heights High School liability insurance for all passengers. That's something that Dr. Stokes and the administration office includes for every traveler. As part of that plan, that's included. Jeff, tell me a little bit about it.
I want to cover a little bit on this Travel Guard protection plan so you're clear on it. This is a policy, just like a standard travel insurance policy, but we have taken out pre-trip cancellation coverage and pre-existing medical condition coverage. And the reason we do that is because we can put the rest of it in for every student at a very low cost. It averages about $15 per student. And the benefits, as we see it used, we have some trip interruption coverage, trip delay. One of our groups last year where 25 of the students didn't get to Spain for a day because of a big weather disruption, each of those got $200 in compensatory reimbursement for that day. And that's about what a day of land is on a tour like this, a couple $100. So it was at least a benefit for that, because the airline, when it's weather, they're not required to do anything, and they won't. So that was a nice feature that we used last year. Accident, sickness, medical, $25,000, that's an umbrella. If your health insurance policy doesn't cover something, let's say someone breaks an ankle on the trip and has to have a cast. Well, if your insurance company isn't going to cover it, you get a $25,000 umbrella. You can submit a claim and be reimbursed for those medical expenses. We did have a few years ago on a Shaker trip. We had one student, I think, with brittle bone disease, who had a broken leg in France, if I recall, and we were able to affect this policy as well. The other big one we see, lost, stolen, damaged baggage or travel documents. If your bag never shows up, you've got coverage. You can buy things while you're in Spain, save the receipts, get reimbursed. That's been a big one on delayed and damaged baggage. We don't see too much of it, but occasionally we've had bags that never show up during the tour. You know, it's a bad deal, but it's travel. But I want to be clear with this policy that we have for every student, there is no pre-tour cancellation coverage, and there's no coverage if you've got a pre-existing medical condition. If you want that coverage, you need to seek travel insurance within 14 days of your deposit. That's for pre-existing medical conditions. If you're not worried about pre-existing medical conditions, you can buy travel insurance anytime you want, up to about a week before departure. So that doesn't matter. But that would be important if you want cancellation protection for your investment in the tour. We don't put it in because we have averaged over the last 15 years 3 cancellations a year out of maybe 2,000 students annually. And what we do in that case, we usually find the school has someone that didn't get in on the original registration that would love to go, and they pay the person that cancels, and we name change the air ticket. That's how it's been handled, I would say 90% of the time. And that's why we don't put in cancellation insurance. Our adult tours, where the participants are over 50, probably 50 to 60% of those buy insurance, but that's a whole different population than student travelers. So if you got questions on that, you can ask me at the end. I have a full schedule of benefits. If you need that as well, you can get that. So what's not included?
So things that are not included in the price of the trip. The first thing is everyone needs a passport. And if you don't have a passport, I would suggest that as soon as you register, start the process for securing a passport. Go through the application process. If you do have a passport, you want to check and make sure that it's valid for 6 months after our return. So that's what, about October 2016, it has to be valid through that?
We use 6 months because that covers all the countries we go to in the world. I think the actual hardline date in Europe is 3 months, but believe it or not, we had a student denied boarding last year. Flew from Minneapolis to Philadelphia, and US Air got in line to catch the flight. They said, your passport's only got 2 months validity on it, you're not going. Yeah, it's a bad deal. A lot of weeping at that point. Got her passport the next day with a chaperone and flew to Europe, but what a hassle. So check your validity and get the process started right away once you are registered and know you're going.
So the whole time we're in Spain, the currency we use is the euro. And the exchange rate is really good right now.
The best in a dozen years, yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
So every day, breakfast is included at the hotel. And I have to tell you, these European breakfasts are amazing. They're nothing at all like the continental breakfast at the Comfort Inn or the Super 8. I mean, we're talking a full spread of fresh fruit and the hot buffet and pastries and more pastries and just tons of fresh juice and beverages. You could fill up on breakfast. Don't probably last all the way till dinner. For many of the students, they'll fill up at breakfast and then just buy a light snack for lunch and then enjoy the group dinner. But they are expected to purchase lunch on their own, and it's going to cost between 5 and 10 euro per day. There's about 2 evenings where they'll have to purchase their own dinner, and they'll be in small groups, and that'll cost about $15 to 20 euro per meal. As Jeff mentioned, pretty much the only place in the world where you get free refills is the United States. Whenever we go to a different country, you have to pay for each beverage, and it can cost about 4 to 5 euro per beverage. So we're going to make sure that at every meal they have table water. If students want to purchase an additional beverage, they'll have to pay for that on their own. Of course, they'll have to purchase their own souvenirs, and a lot of times parents ask me, how much money should I give my child to go on this trip? And I always answer, however much you give them, they're going to spend all of it. And never has a student come back and say, oh, here's the money that you gave me that I didn't spend. Okay?
Very true.
So they're going to spend money on souvenirs. If they fill up their suitcase with hundreds and hundreds of pounds of souvenirs, and the airlines charge them overweight or excess baggage fees, not including instruments. Instruments are covered. We've already taken care of that, but they'll be responsible for that on their own. The tour cancellation coverage and the pre-existing medical conditions.
Dan, I want to make the point too. We have included all gratuities on this tour, so there won't be any pass the hat or tipping at the end of the tour. Like those of you who travel on adult tours, you're maybe accustomed to that, but we won't do any of that on this tour. That's all been included as well.
I want to talk for a minute about eligibility. We spent quite a bit of time this morning making it clear to the students how special of an experience this is, and how it's really, this is important. The students must be members of the Shaker Band in good standing. And we spent a lot of time, what does it mean to be a band member in good standing? Essentially it means you're meeting or exceeding the expectations that are set for you. So these are things like daily attendance. If they have unexcused absences for any reason, that could be a problem. If they're missing daily rehearsals, part of the process getting ready for the trip, when we get to Spain, we don't want to spend time sitting in rehearsal learning our music. We're going to have extra trip rehearsals in the months prior to our departure so that we can learn all the music, so that when we're overseas, we can go and do the sightseeing and have fun and have an incredible experience. There will be a lot of work leading up to that. They'll have music memorization checks, and they'll have the disciplinary record. If the students are getting in trouble at school, and we'll maintain contact with the assistant principals and the principals and check the disciplinary record throughout the year. And if students are getting in trouble, then that's the conversation that we'll sit down with the principals and the administrators and say, we're concerned about your eligibility for going on this trip. Now, one thing I will say is this. As of today, there are 407 students registered for the Shaker Heights High School Band for next year. That's the biggest band we've ever had. This is historic. We might quite possibly be the biggest in Ohio. 407 students. Now, I'm telling you, we're going to do our best to keep track of all 407, and we're going to